هم؟ أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم اجعلنا منهم. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا متقبلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم، له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه، يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء. وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت خلقتني وأنا عبدك وأنا على عهدك ووعدك ما استطعت. أعوذ بك من شر ما صنعت. أبوء لك بنعمتك علي وأبوء بذنبي فاغفر لي فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من الهم والحزن والعجز والكسل والجبن والبخل وضلع الدين وغلبة الرجال. اللهم إنا نسألك العافية في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إنا نسألك العفو والعافية في ديننا ودنيانا وأهلنا وأموالنا. اللهم استر عوراتنا وآمن روعاتنا. اللهم احفظنا من بين أيدينا ومن خلفنا وعن أيماننا وعن شمائلنا ومن فوقنا، ونعوذ بعظمتك أن نغتال من تحتنا. أصبحنا وأصبح الملك لله والحمد لله لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير. ربنا نسألك خير ما في هذا اليوم وخير ما بعده، ونعوذ بك من شر ما في هذا اليوم وشر ما بعده. ربنا نعوذ بك من الكسل وسوء الكبر. ربنا نعوذ بك من عذاب في النار وعذاب في القبر. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. رضيت بالله ربه بالإسلام دينا وبمحمد نبيا. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. سبحان الله وبحمده. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير. سبحان الله الحمد لله الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. أستغفر الله وأتوب إليه. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزينة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزينة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزينة عرشه ومداد كلماته. Ready? What should I do? Uh, which one am I doing? Yeah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم إنا نسألك حبك وحب من يحبك وحب عمل يقربنا إلى حبك يا أرحم الراحمين. The way that we perceive things is essential. It's essential for all of us in our daily lives. It is super important that we have the right framework to understand things, because the way we perceive things, the lens through which we view something is going to affect how we understand that thing. And so we should be very intentional about our perspective on things. we should be very mindful of our perception and often revisit why it is we view things the way that we view things. And so our perception is the way that we see the world, and our perspective is everything that we take as a lens through which we achieve that perception of the world. And as Muslims, and particularly students of knowledge here at IOK, it is of utmost importance that we align our perception of things with revelation, with the Quran and the Sunnah, because everything else in society pushes us away from that lens, away from that perception on things. And so perhaps maybe we need to unlearn some perspectives that may be detrimental to us, or we need to get out of our comfort zones a little bit. Maybe that comfort has bred a level of complacency within us, whatever it may be. Our goal is that we should be viewing things through the lens of revelation and to have true certainty in that. And I wanted to start off with that because this dhikr, that these adhkar, these masnoon adhkar that we look into every week, we read them sometimes, we don't fully think about and ponder over the meanings and how heavy these adhkar really are. And so there's a hadith that we have all probably heard before, but I want to start with it and reiterate it because it can be a mindset shifter for us when it comes to the importance of these masnoon adhkar and all the wada'if that we're trying to implement into our lives. On the authority of Abu Musa, وعن أبي موسى الأشعري رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال مثل الذي يذكر ربه والذي لا يذكره مثل الحي والميت. That on the authority of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiyallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the similitude of one who remembers his Rabb and the one who does not remember him is like that of the living and the dead. And so we need to really internalize that these adhkar that we're doing, these adhkar that we're trying to implement into our lives, the Prophet ﷺ is telling us in a sahih narration narrated in Bukhari and Muslim that it's like the difference between the living and the dead, right? And so the one who's alive, the one who's truly alive, is the one who's external and internal is beautified because of the light of dhikr, the light of ma'rifah, the light of recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while the dead one, maybe his external doesn't look any different, but rather his internal is just an empty void, just a useless organ. And so starting with that mindset and that framework, that this is the disparity between the one who makes dhikr and the one who is not in remembrance of Allah. We look to our mother, Juwayriya bint al-Harith radiyallahu anha, who was one of the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam left her home in the morning, and in one of the narrations it mentions fi masjidiha, and not that she was literally in the masjid, but rather that she had a place in her home where she was she dedicated to prayer, she dedicated to adhkar. She was known for being very diligent in her adhkar. And so from this, we also learned that it's okay and it's a good idea to have a designated place in the home where you perform these acts of ibadah. And so going back to the hadith, the Juwayriya bint al-Harith radiyallahu anha reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam left my home in the morning as I was busy in performing the dawn prayer. He came back in the forenoon and found me sitting there. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked, "Are you still in the same position as I left you?" I replied in the affirmative. Thereupon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "I recited 4 phrases 3 times after I left you. If everything that you have said today was put in the scales, the above would outweigh it. And the above is this adhkar over here. And just to read the Arabic a little bit, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لقد قلت بعدك أربع كلمات ثلاث مرات لوزنت بما قلت منذ اليوم لوزنتهن. And some scholars are of the opinion that this means that it will be equal to it. يعني لساوتهن في أجرهن وقابلتهن في فضلهن. That it would be comparable to what Juwayriya radiallahu anha was reciting since the morning until almost the Dhuhr time. Just these 4 phrases that the Prophet ﷺ taught her would be equal or would outweigh it. And what are these 4 phrases? Subhanallah wa bihamdihi adada khalqihi wa rida nafsihi wa zinata arshihi wa midada kalimati. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi. We went over this phrase, we went over this tasbih, subhanallah. And, as it's commonly translated, glory be to Allah, we can more accurately translate it and explain it, kind of like we mentioned a few weeks ago, that we are affirming that Allah is free from any imperfection, that Allah is free of any shortcoming, He's free from any negative attributes. And the rest of this dhikr, following this phrase, Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, that we are affirming Allah's complete perfection and praising Him, are 4 phrases, just affirming and affirming the extent to which we want to separate Him from any imperfection. So the first phrase, adada khalqihi, that we glorify Allah's perfection in accordance to the number of His creation, adada khalqihi. And just imagine how many creations of Allah truly are there. We can't even enumerate that, right? We can't even enumerate how many creation of Allah there are, let alone, humans. We're all going back and forth on the number of humans that are even alive present day, right? Just imagine from the beginning of time, from Adam until now. Just imagine even nowadays, you take the number 7 billion that people use. Imagine a dhikr, you're saying Subhanallah bihamdihi adada khalqihi, that this dhikr, I'm doing a dhikr worth 7 billion, right? And that's just the creation of humans, right? Just in today's time. Just imagine all of creation, adada khalqihi. So that number is extremely, extremely, extremely vast. So the next phrase is وَرِضَى نَفْسِهِ, that according to His pleasure, according to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the quality and quantity that pleases Allah. And we're all here trying to attain Allah's subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. That's our goal as Muslims. That's our goals as students of knowledge. That, again, back to our perspective, that we are not in this life solely for the purpose of attaining this dunya, right? Our utmost, our goal that is of utmost importance is attaining the rida of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, subhanallah, usabbihu subhanallah wa rida nafsihi, that I glorify Allah to the extent that attains His pleasure. Wa zinata arshihi, and to the extent of His throne, azza wa jal. And the arsh is said to be perhaps the heaviest, the biggest of creation, that of any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. It's mentioned in a Sahih hadith recorded in Sunan Abi Dawud, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, أذن لي أن أحدث عن ملك من ملائكة الله من حملة العرش إنما بين شحمة أذنه إلى عاتقه مسيرة 700 عام. That according to essentially that the distance between the earlobe and the shoulder of one of the angels carrying the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just between the earlobe and the shoulder is a traveling distance of 700 years. SubhanAllah, you can imagine how massive these angels truly are, right? How massive these angels are that are carrying the arsh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So again, we praise Allah and we glorify Allah and we affirm his him being free from any imperfection to the extent of his throne, wazina ta'arshi, to the extent of the weight of his throne, wazina ta'arshi. And the last phrase is wamidada kalimati, which means and as endless as the ink of his words, subhanahu wa ta'ala. That if you were to write all the praises of Allah, if you were to write all the knowledge of Allah, the unseen and the seen, to the extent of how much ink that would really take, that's how much we are glorifying him. And in Surah Al-Luqman, ayah number 27, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَلَوْ أَنَّ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ مِنْ شَجَرَةٍ أَقْلَامٌ وَالْبَحْرُ يَمُدُّهُ مِنْ بَعْدِهِ سَبْعَةُ أَبْحُرٍ مَا نَفِدَتْ كَلِمَاتُ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. That if whatever trees upon the earth were pens and the ocean was ink, that is replenished by 7 more seas, the words of Allah would not be exhausted. Meaning that oceans and oceans and oceans could be turned into ink, and the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be written, but it would not suffice. The ink would be exhausted, but the praise that Allah is deserving of would have not been completed. And so, subhanAllah, these 4 phrases that we can say 3 times, as the Prophet ﷺ taught our mother Juwayda radiallahu anha, can be said in 30 seconds or so, right? But subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ, he reminded us and he taught us that this is comparable or even heavier than dhikr that she was doing from Fajr until forenoon, hours and hours on end. And this just reminds us and shifts our perspective of what is truly, truly valuable and what is going to be heavy on our scales of good deeds on Day of Judgment. And that will be these prophetic practices, all these masnoon adhkar. This is what's going to benefit us, inshallah. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to free us from living for the dunya and having our perspective and shifting our perspective to being more akhirah centric. Allahumma ameen. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.
What does it mean on the authority of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari? What does it mean on the authority?
Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. So it looks like it's a hadith mu'annan. Is that right? It means that
I can guarantee the answer is not in your book. 100%, I already know.
It means that we don't know who narrated it after him.
We know?
I don't know.
It's just what, like, way off the other side.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
You just say from.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Or Abu Musa and the other one said. Anyone have questions?
What was the difference again from here to
700 years.
So like this week we went to
Like my dad works for JPL, so we had a chance to go to like one of the antennas that like do deep space. It's like in like Barstow, like or Irwin, like next to one of the spaces. And so it's like communicating with like spacecraft that's like going deep into space. It's part of like the deep space network, and they have like satellites here in Madrid and in Australia. And so I was just like thinking about like, you know, when we talk about like the creation of Allah and like just the universe and how vast it is, and like it's just crazy when you like, and you have like these huge antennas and you can like hear like so far away of the way that it's achieved. The Voyager is still going, and the past are, you know,
SubhanAllah. I think, I don't know if it's sound narration, but I didn't research it too deeply, but I think there's a hadith that mentions something to the fact that the comparison of the seven heavens to the kursi of Allah is like a ring in the Sahara Desert, and then the similitude of the comparison of the kursi to the arsh is the same thing. So just imagine how vast we even imagine the seven heavens to be, and Allah's arsh is even beyond that.
Anyone else? Anyone else? You go to the hot seat, feel free. No, okay.
Yeah, okay.
Wait, Muhammad Mardini had a question. Yeah, Muhammad Mardini asked.
Assalamu alaikum. I just had a question. What's it called? He said we need to look at everything through the scope of the Quran and Sunnah. I mean, isn't that what every Muslim is doing? Maybe you could just like elaborate a little more, if possible. Sorry for that question. But...
Isn't that what every Muslim should be doing? Is that what you said?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that every Muslim should be trying to do things from the lens of Quran and Sunnah.
No, I'm saying like everyone is already trying. Isn't everyone trying to do that? So maybe like if you could elaborate, I don't know if that makes sense.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
Oh, okay.
I think that I don't know what I meant when I said that obviously we're all trying to, but sometimes we don't actually maybe truly understand the extent of these words. Like it might be hard to fully comprehend like how these little four phrases can be in comparison to someone's dhikr for hours and hours and hours on end, can be comparable or even heavier on the scales, right? But that's just shifts our perspective of how the Prophet ﷺ's practices were the best practices for us. So we don't need to like look elsewhere other than his sunnah per se. Try to make our own formula. That's just to kind of paraphrase more, or explain more what I mean by that.
No, that makes sense. Jazakallah khairan.
Anything else?
Sorry if I didn't answer your question. I didn't fully understand. The Mardini question.
All right. Our final's coming up in like 2 months. What I want you to do for your final open-ended paper and presentation, whatever you want to talk about, whatever you want to write about, write a paper that's like 850 words. Make sure you quote something, bring some counter examples, and then present a paper going over your presentation going over your paper. Pretty straightforward topic, something about Islam, something related to something religious. But make sure you send me your topic. Did I tell you what to send me your topic by? Send it to me by some point. I'll put a date on here somewhere.
You said that's in the priorities?
I mean, it depends if you're like. It depends on what your topic is. Go straight forward. It's literally just write about something you're interested in. You came across something in Quduri or Riyadh al-Salihin or Mishkat, or I heard there were some questions about تلك الغرانيق العلا وإن شفاعتهن لترتجى, all that kind of stuff. Feel free to write, enjoy, and I don't want this to be burdensome. I want this to be like, wow, it would be cool if I read a paper explaining this ayah. Well, don't read a paper, write a paper explaining that ayah, in Sheikh Zakaria Kandahlawi rahimahullah's autobiography, he was like, the way my dad would teach class would be different than everyone else would teach class. In my dad's class, the teacher doesn't really say anything. The student is the one that's supposed to read and do the work, and the student is supposed to teach the class. And the teacher's job is simply to say, that is correct or that is wrong. And then he would tell his son, is like, do you want to prepare for a class like a student? When a student prepares for a class, all they do is come up with questions. What does this mean? This person said this. How do we relate this hadith with, the Hanafis, they say this, or why is it like this? Is this, mansub or marfu'? So you should prepare like a teacher. Because the teacher comes up with all the answers. It's like, why if you don't do half the work of preparing like the student, do all the work and prepare like a teacher. Does the teacher have access to any more books than you do? No. So they just do a little bit more and come up with the answers to all the questions that you came up with overnight. And so this is like one of those things, whatever you want to explore, talk about, and the like. And I thought about this last week. I don't know. I'm going to use the word debate, but I'm going to use the word debate is there like a nice, gentle word other than debate? A productive discussion. If anybody would like to have a productive discussion, talking about where there's two sides, there's a side that is productively for, and there's another side that's productively not for. Perhaps Halloween or Thanksgiving or Christmas. I would like Christmas. Well, somebody who's really got the energy to defend the celebration of Christmas, maybe I don't know. I'd be a little confused. Unless you're just good at being productively for things. Would anybody like to take that on? Like you can make like a team of 3 or 4 people and be pro Halloween or Thanksgiving and be not pro Halloween or Thanksgiving. Would you all like to do something like that?
Nobody's gonna be really for it. I'm gonna make.
Say your initial thing again.
I think what would be a better discussion might have been like for or against or like a topic where you can have a discussion going on where yeah, you're celebrating dead.
Not celebrating dead people. You're celebrating the killing of people. Halloween is a celebration of dead people. Thanksgiving is then a celebration. It's crazy. Wow, look at America. Halloween is the celebration of dead people. Thanksgiving is the celebration of killing people. I was like, well, people can do it for other reasons, but like the initiation of the government holiday, where the Pilgrims met the Native Americans, and then they seem to no longer exist. And then Christmas is a celebration of one supposed dead person, and then Easter is then the celebration of the revival of the one said dead person, and then the 4th of July it's not religious, but then it's the celebration of finishing off the people that weren't finished off in November. America. That's a summary of American holidays. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us. And would anybody like to do something like that? Again, I'm totally open-ended, leave it on your plate. I can give some boundaries, but
Wait, Sheikh, could it be like you take an opinion and then like it's an open discussion during your presentation where other people can say we disagree because like does it have to be more than one person or because I don't know, 11 to 17 minutes is a lot. So I don't know.
that's separate. That's separate. That's separate. Like if we were to have like a formal uh
Oh,
bring in
oh,
like
that's
and have like a debate.
oh, that's
It's
not.
separate. It's a separate. I mean,
Oh,
as a separate thing, would you all as a class like to have like a debate on some topic?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you all have any topics that you would like to engage in such a activity in? What did you say? Kalam? But nobody here knows kalam or hates kalam enough to have a proper argument on kalam.
Sorry, what was the presentation in Arabic or in like the alphabet?
Yeah, I think it'll be English. I want to understand it. Okay, well, let's take. Anyone have an idea? If not, maybe for homework, come up with like 3 potential things you would like to have a structured, productive discussion about. Oh wow! But is anybody like? Does anybody here only eat hand slaughter like properly? Okay, so like this is gonna be a slightly one-sided debate. Okay. Okay, great. All right, what else? Let's just come down with a few, and then for homework, come up with a few more, and then we can pick next time.
Chef music, maybe?
I feel like because I feel like the conclusion is always just going to be, well, yeah, even if we say it's allowed, well, you can't do this, this, and this, and a lot of the genres of. I don't know, unless somebody really wants to totally spearhead one side.
You could do like vocals,
Yeah.
computer, sounds.
But is the discussion going to be, can I use like digital instruments,
No, it's like people do vocals, but to use a computer to
auto tune?
adjust the sound.
I don't even know if there's fatwa out. So you're all gonna like come up with the fatwa on like auto tune. I have not. Okay, that's great. That's great. Again, like that was my point before. Why wait for a fatwa on auto tune? Why not just write collectively as the IOK seminary a fatwa on auto tune? Constitute sunnah clothing.
Or actually, you know how, I don't know, like in the book it was talking about Islam promoting being visibly Muslim. Say like what what does that look like in your daily
Visibly. So what were you saying? You had something else before?
No, I would say vocal.
Anything else? Quick, get it off your mind.
I guess like when you're like raised children, like how much you should enforce with family time.
I feel like that's gonna be tough because very few of you have children, and some of you are close to being children. So I would like to be raised with a minimal amount of Islamic enforcement. But yes, continue.
Not as a parent.
How to teach Sunday school. Well, do you debate those things, or is that just like these are like methods that we have tried that have been successful and have not been successful? I'm sure.
But like kids, like, because I feel like there's conflict about that.
I don't want to put it down because the absurdity of having an issue with Kinz of the Masjid, it just seems absurd. But is anybody here opposed to having children in the masjid and wants to defend that side? But what's the argument? Like they shouldn't come?
If they're not like, if they're not able to be like held or like stand in the and stuff, then they shouldn't be coming in like, and then because of that, like mom, you know, think about it.
The Prophet ﷺ had kids that were crawling all over him.
I don't know this, and but when I asked Shaykh about it, he said it was like belief, but there's like a lot of other stuff that was like. So I mean, that's why. And then there's also like just how the community is, and like how there's some people that just get.
I mean, is anybody here gonna be defending like the 60-year-old uncle who gets mad like that a child like that is very frustrating.
Teenagers and stuff, and we're not afraid. Maybe they're doing things that should not be highly controlled. That also.
I feel like now we're just getting into like how to run a masjid in an Islamic school. I feel like that these aren't really like debates. This is just like we need like admin and teacher training courses. Oh, that is a yeah, just human how to be a like I gave a khutbah for like a muhsin khutbah, which is intended for families who have children with special needs or disabilities and the like. Somebody was like, "Oh yeah, you know, sometimes I come to the masjid and people tell me I shouldn't come to the masjid with like my autistic child." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "If somebody ever yells at you, you can tell me and I will yell at them." Because guess what? If you have a problem with kids making sounds, there are old people that come to IOK who also just like make sounds. Like what people make sounds. I don't understand. Anyways, okay. Okay, think about it. Maybe we can decide next week. Okay. Anything else? Any random stuff anybody wants to bring up before we get into our book?
Chef, I just thought of like media, like it's like in general, like either entertainment or like social media, stuff like that.
Entertainment media. Basically, what you're trying to get at is can I watch TV and movies? I'm assuming that's going to be the crux of it. Okay, cool. Anything else? And please do me justice when I try to do something like this a couple years ago. Everybody that was ready just didn't show up for like 3 weeks. So yeah.
Sheikh, are you going to be taking a side as well, or
No,
are you just gonna watch?
I'm gonna moderate. I'm gonna meet.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm gonna instigate. Because if it's not fun enough, I'm gonna make it fun. Anything else? Any other random stuff we want to get into before we get into our book?
So this is for next week.
No. Next week we'll kind of decide. Maybe go through like who's on which side, who's on what side, and then y'all can figure out how you want to handle it. This 2 weeks from sorry. Okay.
November 15th is when it's going to take.
No. Deciding a topic and going over ground rules.
And then 22nd, when you have the actual.
Maybe on the 6th. Debate. Deciding a topic, teams. and going over ground rules. That seem reasonable? Okay. Anything else? You finished this, yes? Finished greeting at a gathering, yeah. Okay, can I get a reader?
When you enter a gathering, do not sit between two persons, rather sit on their left or right side. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no one is to sit between two people without their permission. When two people are kind enough to make one for you to sit between them, do not sit cross-legged or have them not. Ibn Arabi rahimahullah ta'ala quotes a sage who said, two persons are considered unfair. One, a person to whom advice is offered and he takes offense to it, and two, a person who is favored with a seat in a narrow space and sits cross-legged. When you are seated between two people, do not eavesdrop unless it is not a private or secret matter. Eavesdropping is a bad habit and sin. Rasulullah said, whoever listens to people's conversations against their wishes will be punished by molten lead being poured down their ears in the day of judgment. ومن استمع إلى حديث قوم وهم له كارهون أو يفرون منه سبة أذنه
Sorry, it's like, especially if you're seated between two people, do not distract them. It's like you're between two people, they're talking like over you. Isn't that like on the
Yeah, no, I think the wording here, this might be something lost in translation, where like if you're sitting around people that are having a private conversation, don't go and sit between them, or if you're sitting next to people who are having a private conversation, don't eavesdrop into their conversation. Like yeah, if two people are sitting with the space of a person in the middle and they let you sit in the middle, that's their problem for speaking about something private with your head in the middle. That's like what we covered earlier about if somebody peeks into your house, you can poke them. If your door is open, that's your problem. That's your problem. The issue is that with sitting cross-legged. The issue is with there's a tight space, and instead of you sitting in a manner that will be less intrusive to the people around you, you sit and you take up more space. That's the issue. And obviously, again, somebody may be a bigger or a taller person. Somebody may have seating issues. Those aren't the things being discussed here. The thing is, you were given a space and you're taking over the space that other people already have. That's like if somebody comes and sits here and there's like, oh, there's a space right next to you, and they're like, and they just push you into the couch. And then they're like, all right, this table is mine. Like I was already sitting here with half the table, you can have the other half. Why are you giving me a quarter now? Yeah.
Take note that it is inappropriate for you to whisper to someone sitting next to you if you are in a group of few people. By doing so, you are deserting and isolating the third person, which will lead him to entertain worse thoughts. Such an act does not benefit a Muslim. Rasulullah said, Rasulullah has emphatically negated this as the conduct of Muslim. إذا كانوا ثلاثة فلا يتنافى اثنان دون الثالث. Imam Malik and Abu Dawud rahimahullah ta'ala reported that Rasulullah said, never will any two Muslims whisper to each other in the presence of a third person. The choice of word by Rasulullah never will, not never should, indicates that such a mistake is not only inappropriate, but unimaginable and simply disturbing.
Right, because this is something that is very hurtful and harmful. If you are three people and you need to have a private conversation with one of them, don't do so there, because the third person will feel left out and hurt and ignored. You need to have a private conversation. Go and leave and do it somewhere else, so that this other person isn't to be hurt. And same thing, other things that are mentioned about don't speak in another language, don't have inside jokes. Again, if there's just three people, don't single it out in such a way that that third person just feels ignored, left out, as if he's purposely or she's purposely being ignored from that conversation. No, then great question.
The law of the law in places. What if they were four? And it does not matter. Answer. Meaning in that case, it's not wrong to whisper.
Meaning, if you have a larger group and two people were to kind of have a mini sub conversation, then it would be fine. Although again, don't think of 3/4/5 as like as a rule of technicality. If it's like there are 4 people who are sitting and the 2 people basically still keep in mind their feelings and emotions. If they're here trying to talk to you and you're just like, actually, I'm going to ignore you, that's also not befitting of a Muslim. But if they're like, seems like you two have a private conversation, we can just continue our conversation, and that would be fine.
Respecting the elderly. Recognize the status of the elderly and give them due respect. When walking with them, walk slightly behind to the right. Let them enter and exit first. When you meet them, greet them properly and respectfully. When you discuss something with them, let them speak first and listen to them attentively and graciously. If the conversation involves debate, you should remain polite, calm, and gentle. Ensure that you speak to an elder in a low tone. When you're addressing, never forget to remain respectful.
When just by somebody being older, man, woman, you have an older aunt, uncle, teacher, whatever, just even the elder people in the masjid who may be yelling at kids, when we speak with them, it doesn't mean you can't be clear and say something is or is not okay, but the manner, the tone that I would take will shape how I speak to them. And then just other etiquettes about, ensuring that they walk to, the front. I think we'll read something about, as if they're the leader in prayer. Because we don't really live in a society that embodies this. We don't really see this. And so it's always just a confusing thing because it's like, it's a part of like American culture that you like open the door for people, but to open the door for your teacher, you have to be in front of your teacher. So it's like, it's a hodgepodge. So again, always use common sense, use whatever is most befitting of wisdom. And if people may have certain habits or tendencies, if they're not problematic, then there's no issue in doing small extra things that may be enjoyed by different people of respect, like elders. Like, for example, there may be some things that are like, in my house, like my dad and grandfather, they just love having like this seat. It's like, there's no reason. It's something small enough. It doesn't contradict anything in the religion. Like, you have no logical reason to prefer that, but whatever, we'll give it to you. As an elder, you fine. You can get that. Continue.
Let me review with you some ahadith of Rasulullah that encourage these polite manners. 2 brothers came to Rasulullah to discuss a personal matter. The younger brother began to speak. At this, Rasulullah remarked, the elder, meaning give the elder brother his right and allow him to speak first. Sayyidina Ubadah bin Samit reports that Rasulullah said, whoever does not respect our elders is not of us. Another version reports, whoever does not respect our elders is not compassionate to our youth and does not give our scholars due honor is not of us. من لم يرحم صغيرنا ويجل كبيرنا فليس منا. ليس من أمتي من لم يجل كبيرنا ويرحم صغيرنا ويحدث بعالمنا حقه.
The one that has a mention of alim just definitely has perhaps some weakness in the chain, but the first one, no doubt, different wordings of that are very clearly, authentically narrated. And again, the exact manner in which respect is given to elders is going to differ from time and place and culture and environment and the like. If you're in the East and your pinky toe happens to be slightly inclined towards an elder person, they're going to want to cut it off, right? In America, you can just be straight up full legs towards somebody and they're like, I don't care. Like, it's not even imagining some kind of disrespect. And so again, different cultures, different environments, different households. The way honoring and respecting or dishonoring and disrespecting takes place is cultural. But to honor, to care for elders and people of knowledge is something a part of our religion. So again, none of this should be, we're not being asked to import cultural practices. We're being asked to do whatever is appropriate in our culture. Does that all make sense?
Observe from the following condition how Rasulullah taught the youth the manners and companionship and habit of giving everyone. Sayyidina Malik, Sayyidina Malik, being paraded along and said, I was a group of youth of similar age that they were Rasulullah in Medina for permanence. Rasulullah was very kind and compassionate. He sensed that we might have been longing for our families back home and inquired about whom he had left behind. When we informed him, he remarked, go back to your families, live with them, teach them Islam, and inform them of good deeds. At the time of prayer, let one of you call out the adhan and let your eldest lead the salah. Earlier that أهليكم فأتينوا فيهم وعلموهم وانفروهم فإذا حضرت الصلاة فليؤذن لكم أحدكم ثم لكم أكبر.
And again, all of this is still to be, these are still general reminders, because if the eldest person is not Muslim, doesn't matter. If the eldest person does not have the adequate requirements to lead the salah, then again, the Prophet is just generally saying by this, if there is somebody qualified that is older, then that person should be given priority. When you have two people who have roughly the same qualifications, then one of the ways to differentiate would be somebody that happens to be older.
Ibn Rajab Allah has narrated in the verse Imam Ali ibn Barak who studied under Imam Ali Abu Ya'la al-Hanbali himself a judge and the chief sheikh of the Ahmadi school of law during his time. Imam Ali ibn Mubarak says, one day Qadi Abu Ya'la said to me while walking with him, you had walked with someone to do honor, where would you walk? I replied, I do not know. He said, walk to his right. Place him in the position of the Imam in Salah, leave his left side clear in case he needs to spit or get rid of it.
And again, so again, this is a way that in that time, in that culture, they would show a kind of respect and the like. For example, in today's day and age, you can say our culture showing respect would be opening the door for somebody, right? And the like. And again, like when you hear things from your teachers that have studied in other places, like the way they would show respect to their teachers, they would probably feel very weird if you were to do the same thing for them. Like, go and ask Sheikh Nama if you can massage his feet. He'll be like, he'll kick you, right? Or you know, sometimes we'll try to like, take Sheikh Farhan's bag, and he'll be like, "What's wrong with you? Don't take my. I can hold my own bag. Like I have arms, Whereas that's very customary in different parts of the world. And just to show that, like we were talking about last time about kissing hands and other things about just culture in the subcontinent, for a teacher or a student to like lay down in class or to have their feet towards the qibla is just like, as the Arabs would say, just straight ayb. Like that is not okay to do. Like you cannot lay down, you cannot lean back, you cannot be in the utmost, proper, most respectful form of seating. Definitely cannot have your feet towards the qibla. And then you go to like Mauritania and stuff like that. Teacher is like this while like teaching hadith and stuff like that. Like if somebody from like a Darul Uloom went to go see like a Mauritanian teacher, they'd probably have a heart attack. No, like seriously. Like seriously. But in that culture, in that norms, like the person teaching straight up has memorized cover to cover Bukhari and Muslim. He's not disrespecting Bukhari and Muslim by laying down and hearing the student recite it, right? Or whatever else it may be. In other cultures, it's like, I'm going to direct my feet towards the qibla as a sign of respect for the qibla and the like. So again, know that these differences in culture do exist, and the point isn't to particularly mimic or copy a specific culture. The point is, how do I show respect, and how does this person want to be given that level of respect? Cool.
Others are to be served first. Give precedence to the elderly or to dignitary behind anyone else. After that, we may proceed with those on the right, which is in accordance with the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The evidence supporting this name, in addition to the two ahadith mentioned above, is illustrated in many ahadith, some of which are shown below. Imam Muslim, rahimahullah ta'ala, quoted in his Sahih under the chapter of the manner and rules of eating and drinking, that Sayyidina Hulayfa bin Yaman, radiyallahu anhu, said, whenever we were invited to a meal with Rasulullah, we would not stretch out the food until we reached it.
Why do you always say Ibni as majhul? Because there's nothing making, because it's Sayyiduna, not Sayyidina. It was, no, I know. But for example, next year, in 2 years from now, when you're reading the Sanad, they're not going to be majrur half the time anymore. Because there's going to be haddathana, the fa'il is the person. Akhbarana, the fa'il is the person. So, haddathana Muhammad ibn Bashar. Akhbarana Bundur, Gundur, etc. Hudayfa ibn al-Yamani. That doesn't mean if it was an, then it'd be an Sayyidina Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman. Any issue with this part right here? He doesn't have chapter titles. But he's like in that section of his book. Right? And the point of Hudayfa radiallahu anhu's statement is that we would wait until the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would eat. Now again, here there is like I'm saying, these aren't step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, right? There is general priority given to the guests, general priority given to elders, general priority given to people of status. But for example, here the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is the host. He is the host, right? And in other narrations, he tells us that the host should be the last one to eat. The host should be the last one to eat. Now again, these are general etiquettes. These are it's not that we're ignoring the sunnah, but these are general etiquettes in a way, that's going to be the most beneficial and befitting to honor and show respect and hospitality towards his guests. But for you, an example, in a certain environment, in a certain demographic, I see this a lot at medium-sized family parties. Oh no, you go. Oh no, you go. 10 minutes have gone by. Nobody has gotten food. Please, can you come and eat? Oh, no, wait, no, okay. And then he's like, coming close, bro wants food, right? It's like, no, you're the elder, go. No, I'm gonna wait. It's like, somebody just pick up the plate and start getting food, because now nobody has eaten and the food's been ready for like 20 minutes now. So in that case, if the host just decided, like, listen, nobody's here, started. So I'm just going to start so that people can start to eat, because my point is to honor my guests. If my guests are in this battle of you start, and they're not eating, then I'm not honoring them. So let me honor them by starting the line, so that now they're just like, well, now we feel bad because our host is already eating, so we might as well, take food too. And one of my teachers from Syria would have an additional habit of, as the host, would take extra food and would take 2, 3, 4 servings. To be like, I do not want my guest to feel shy to take more. I will take a big plate, so my guest does not feel shy to take a big plate. I will get second and third, so that my guest does not feel shy to take second and thirds. So see how this is all like a balance about how there's one key goal in mind, in this case, taking care of one's guests. The exact manner in which that is done, there are general guidelines, but the goal is Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir falyukrim dayfa. Take care of, honor, be hospitable to your guests.
To emphasize the importance of good manners, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah alayhi in his book Riyadh al-Salihin cited a large collection of hadith and devoted an entire chapter to the subject entitled Chapter of Respecting Scholars, the Elderly, the Dignitaries, giving them precedence in the best seat and acknowledging their rank. Allah Jalla Jalaluhu said in the Quran, "Hal yastawi alladhina ya'lamun wal ladhina la ya'lamun, innama yatadhakkaru ulul albab." Are those who know equal to those who do not know? Are those who know equal to those who do not know? It is only those who possess understanding that receive admonition.
Year 3, did you already cover this bab last year? Let's just keep it at that. Okay, continue.
سيدنا عقبة بن عامر سيدنا عقبة بن عامر البدري الأنصاري رضي الله عنه. Sayyidina Rasulullah said, those who are best at reciting the Quran should lead the people in Salah. If they are equal, then those who are well versed in the Sunnah should lead. If they are equal, then the person who emigrated earlier from Medina should lead. They emigrated at the same time, then the others should lead.
And so again, here we see that earlier there was a mention of the elders should lead, but that's not mutlaq. What's mutlaq? Year 3, year 4, year 5? It's not unrestricted. But yes, there's a general encouragement let elders, go first. But if the elder is a jahil, I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just like they just don't know. Well, what if you had a 7-year-old that became Muslim yesterday? Are they going to lead? No. And this also is balanced with the host is the one that has the most right to lead. But if the host became Muslim yesterday, then they should not be the one leading. Or if the host is a 5-year-old, who's like, mom and dad, I want to have a play date with who? Sheikh Naman and Sheikh Farhan. Okay, sure. Well, what if the father's like, no, I'm going to lead. It's okay. Because I follow the sunnah. Right? Like, again, there are multiple things to keep in mind. There are general guidelines. That's why this is everything in the chapter of adab. An interesting thing to keep in mind is, again, Hanafis are very, very big on al-amru lil-wujub. If there's a sigha of amr, then the default meaning is that it is wajib. That entire premise changes once you get into the context of adab. But the vast majority of like, this is sigha al-amr, sigha al-amr, sigha al-amr. Nobody says it's wajib. That's because the context changes, the environment changes. There are big principles at play in adab, and all the recommendations are recommendations to balance, keeping things in mind. Okay with that?
Abdullah bin Mas'ud reported that Rasulullah said, let your wise and intelligent ones stand close to me in salat, and those that are lower than them think, and then those that are lower than them think, and so on. Rasulullah said this phrase.
I said, liyalini ulul ahlami wan nuha. Liyalini, the people right behind me should be ulul ahlam, the people who literally means like had puberty, but meaning older, wan nuha, and people of intellect and intelligence. Now, it's something important for those people leading salah. That if the imam doesn't know the next ayah, do I want everybody behind me to be 3-year-olds? No, I would ideally want the few people right behind me to be somebody that can correct me if I make a mistake. Or if I break my wudu, do I want to go pull somebody from the 3rd row to the mimbar? Or ideally, is just the person right behind me so that there's the least amount of confusion. That also, the statement, وَلُلْ أَحْلَامِ وَالنُّهَا should be in the middle and in the first saf. Right? So if you have knowledge and you are older, don't be like, I'm gonna, I know there's the most reward in the first saf, but I'm just such a miskeen, faqir, poor, nobody. I'm gonna be in the back, left corner so that nobody can see me. Why? Get the reward, stand in the first row. For this, women should still prioritize whatever is their best row and whatever is the middle of their row. That should always be given preference, depending on the environment, the first or the frontmost or the backmost, depending. But even then, as a level of piety and righteousness and getting more reward, they should prioritize what is our best row and what is the middle of our best row. That should still be prioritized. Does that make sense? It depends on the environment. Like I would just go with whatever is the norm of that place. Whatever is the norm of that place, but still, like if whatever at IOP, like this is where the stuff starts, right? Because the door is in the back. Start a row in the back, and the door's in the back. You're gonna block the way, so we're gonna start in the front, and I'm gonna prioritize the middle of that row. Yeah, the sutra is in front of the imam. You're not allowed to walk in front of the imam. You can walk in front of everybody else. Not that you should, but yeah. But again, ladies should also keep that in mind, that where is our entryway? Right? In the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, their door was where the split was between the men and women's rows. So they would enter into the front of the women's area. So there, if you have the row in the front, don't make no sense. Right? So there you fill into the back, and also it's one joint area. And so starting in the back also makes more sense to have a differentiation. Does that make sense? Again, all of this is to be kept in mind about just what is the most, logically reasonable and appropriate. And any women's section that is separate, that has its own door in the back, I think the imam of that masjid should tell people, like, start your row at the front. At the front. Okay. Continue.
The law or the law said after the battle of Uhud, Rasulullah there were two martyrs at a time in the same day. He would ask which of the two knows more of the Quran. On the informed as to who it was, Rasulullah said, Rasulullah laid him down first. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar stated that Rasulullah said, I was brushing my teeth with an miswak when the two men approached me. I handed the miswak to the younger, but I was then instructed to hand it to the elder. Accordingly, I handed it to the elder.
And for the previous one, right, showing how the Prophet ﷺ would prefer and give extra status and importance to somebody that had memorized more Quran. And again, in today's day and age, a lot of people memorize the Quran, they have no clue, but at least there's something inside of their hearts that they have memorized, at least some of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's something, good, beautiful, wholesome inside of them, and that should be noted or pointed out or given respect to. Again, I'm reading the biography of Sheikh Zakir Kaddafi, so like, I have a lot of stories from him. He's like, my grandmother was a hafidha who would read one manzil every day, which is like 1/7 of the Quran. So she would finish every week. And just like in Ramadan, she would do one khatam every day. It's like, and then he was like, yeah, for 40 years, I also did one khatam a day in Ramadan. And then he was like, this is how I would do it. It's just like, at night, I recite like 4 juz. Before Fajr, I recite another juz. After Fajr, I recite like another 2-3 juz. And then I take a nap for like an hour. And then I wake up and then I do some more. And then when I'm praying, Salatul Duha toward the later time. And then I read like a juz per rak'ah. And then like after, then I, it's just, And it's like somebody came and was really mad that they couldn't talk to me. He's like, brother, it's Ramadan comes to us too, but all I wanted to tell you is Assalamu alaikum. So he's like, Wa alaikum salam. And he just keeps reading. Because like the guy had nothing to say. He's just like, I've been trying to talk to you all. I've been trying to give you salam all day. I didn't know where you were. He's like, okay, wa alaikum salam. Anything else? Bye. Okay, we're 4 months away from Ramadan. Okay, continue.
Stated that part of paying homage to Allah to instruct an elderly Muslim whose hair has turned gray, a packet of the Quran will neither too strict nor too lax with regard to it, and it just will. I'll say that counted that the beggar shot by Rasulullah Sallallahu way. She gave him a piece of dry bread. At another time, a properly dressed, well-groomed man passed by her. She let him sit and offered him a room. When asked about that, she replied, Rasulullah said, treat people according to their stars.
انزل الناس منازلهم. let's finish, and then we can look it up together.
Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala included this chapter by citing a hadith reported by Imam Bukhari, Muslim, in which Sayyid ibn
Samura.
Samura bin Jundub radiyallahu anhu said, though I was a young child at the time of Rasulullah asked to listen to what he said immediately, and he prevents me from narrating beyond the presence of the men elevated.
And again, that's something too. Again, the background of this would be, it's not like there is knowledge that I had that they don't, but they are saying what I know, so I don't need to particularly say it, right now. And again, depending on the gathering, depending on the environment, perhaps sometimes similar mindset should be kept. I'm not saying I am in no way, shape, or form, good exemplar of this. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make me and all of us. But sometimes there's be a conversation, amongst multiple scholars and like about something. You all know me. I usually have a lot of things to say. But I won't say anything. And then after, if I'm, talking to Sheikh Farhan or Sheikh Bilal, I'll just be like, okay, but this person said this. Why didn't anybody say this? Like, that doesn't even make sense what this person said. This is what it should be. I'll just like rehab the conversation with them on my own time. It's like, why did any of that happen? Shouldn't this be the case? Shouldn't it be like this? Why did nobody do that? And the like. And no doubt, because at other times, if a younger companion did know something, they would speak up. And we do know of other times when the companion that was leading was the imam of their little masjid during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was somebody that was young, but that was because that person was also, the person that was the most qualified. So again, we're giving priority and status to elders, but that is not at the detriment of losing out on knowledge or virtue or piety or anything, like that.
That's something about like when they have like.
Yeah, where did that go? Yeah, just as general signs of old age. This is those things where it's like this. We're not talking about the technicality per se. We're talking about if somebody is older. You got like a 5-year-old who just has all white hair. Because no, like there are some kids whose hair is this straight white. Like that's just the way they're born.
Yeah.
But like I'm trying to give him like an extreme to like make the point of like, not that child should be ignored, but I'm saying like everybody knows that there are people older than this child, right? Again, like as a summary, we're not necessarily looking at the exact particulars. Perhaps this was most like, what comes to mind is perhaps this was a specific circumstance. As the Prophet said, hey, there was older people with white hairs here, they should have been given the priority. Or soon we will see older people with white hairs. They should be given priority in life.
Or like even with Prophet, he didn't have much gray.
Yeah, exactly. And there are people younger than him who had, more gray hair. Right? Like the Prophet when he was close to passing away, he had 14 to 20, 21 white hairs, a little bit right here, a little bit right here, maybe a little bit at the part. And when Anas radiallahu anhu asked, or was asked, did he die? He said he didn't need to dye his hair, because he didn't need to cover anything. But Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, already, who's younger than him, was already doing a full head dye. Okay, continue. Okay, yeah, this is an exception. Okay. You heard Khadija ibn Zayd, Ali ibn Sirin last time. Talked about 3 people already. We already talked about the young men that came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He told them that you're akbarukum, the eldest of you should lead. غير الغالي فيه والجافي عنه. Shifa, go ahead and read. المتجا المتجاوز اسم فاعل الحد مفعول به مصدر اسم فاعل اسم مفعول can take the place of فعل at times. most likely وتتبعي من الجفا. Translate. تجاوز يتجاوز تجاوزا. Yeah, meaning being too extreme. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so al-mutajawizu, the one that tajawuz itself doesn't have a bad connotation. It just means to pass something, right? But in this case, he's explaining al-ghali or like tughyan as well, to do tajawuz an al-had. So this is somebody that goes beyond the limit, the boundary, in being extreme and acting according to the Quran. But how does that take place? وَتَتَبُّعِ مَا خُفِيَ مِنْهُ, by following and doing what is hidden or not apparently clear in the text of the Quran. Meaning this person is not at a level in which they know the deep meanings. So there's like, yeah, I think this is what this means, and then they start acting on it. وَاشْتَبَهَ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ مَعَانِيهِ, and what gets confused on them in terms of its meanings. So there's somebody who's like, they have somebody that knows like modern standard Arabic, and they're reading Quran like, oh, this is what this ayah means, right? And then they hold that as the commandment, and then they do that, right? Like, you want to have an example of this? Explain. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point, right? Where a guy will have just taken like they'll لا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى حتى تعلموا ما تقولون. Do not come close to salah if you're drunk and you don't understand what you're saying. Like, no, I only took one sip. I understand what I'm reading, so I can pray. Right? So somebody's like, they're going off, but اشتبه عليه من معانيه. He doesn't know what this means. The point is that ayah is correct. In fact, he actually did understand it correctly, but he did not put it into context with إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون. Believers, these are all abominations from the devil. Stay away from them so that you can be successful. So something like that, or Um, anyone else have other examples?
Like saving versus toxic.
No, if somebody was to like just be totally confused, like just doing the wrong thing because they like misunderstood the base text of the ayah.
I would just go to the on first, but there's about divorce and that period of
Or like, yeah, the ayah is at-talaqu marratan, right? Talaq is literally like 2 times. How many times does the free person have right to talaq? 3. Like, look, brother, the Quran says you only have 2, right? So it's like, okay, you read the ayah, but that's not what it's saying. Meaning 2 times you have the option of then getting back. The 3rd time is when you do not. Then it's فإمساك الطلاق مرة ثم إمساك بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان. 2, and then either you stay with her with goodness or you let her go with goodness. So somebody can read the base text, totally miss the point, and do something else. من معاني من زائدة. So معانيه اشتبه عليه. The meanings are confused on him. Meaning the meaning is he gets confused with the meaning. That makes sense?
its meaning.
It's meaning confusing. Yeah. اشتبه عليه, like shabah is for something to resemble something. Right? So ishtabah is like it resembles something else that's similar, and so he gets confused with it. Like, is this mine or is this mine? You know? And then Jafi is somebody that leaves it, who doesn't want to recite it, doesn't want to act on it. Something like that. Okay. التارك له, somebody that leaves it. البعيد عن تلاوته والعمل بما فيه, and is far from reciting it and acting on what is in it. فإن هذا من الجفاء. This is from roughness. This is how Bedouins are often described with having this kind of roughness and the like. Why does OneDrive always make it that if I want to share something, it allows everybody to edit? It's just like the craziest thing. Okay, that book you also have now. Anything else? We okay? Any other questions? Ayat about backbiting, but take that to the extent where you don't warn people about getting into business with the person. Yeah, or somebody's like, I cannot talk about other people. Like, how's your brother doing? Can't talk about other people, you know. Anything else? Where do we reach? Greeting in order of merit. Anything else? Any random stuff? Any cool stuff in Riyadh, Quduri, Mishkat, Jalalain? What other years we got on here? Mm-hmm.
What was your question? Like, how do you, for me, like, in sometimes like, who bring, like, the footnotes and stuff, it'll be like some.
Totally off the walls. Not even out of the world. Outside of the universe. Like a jinn came and told them.
So, and then I have a hard time, like, understanding why I would be there, or trying to understand it, and then I'm like, this is so bad, because then about the chapter was with that, and then all this stuff, and I'm like, well, everything question is like. But anyway, I don't understand.
In Islam, it's full of people. People are Muslim. And just like there is every genre of book out there that exists in every language, the same thing happens to people who also happen to be Muslim. So just like you will find everything under the sun in English, you'll find everything under the sun in Arabic. And so in the same way, somebody's like, the most outlandish thoughts and ideas will just come to somebody like, oh, look, this is what this ayah means. And just like not even left field, like there's no field, you know, just like out of nowhere. Do you give credit to those things? I mean, if it really makes sense, then it jives. But a lot of times people just like to say things, and a part of there is an asset and a facet of Islamic studies that are on the broader side, where it's like you have the room to flow and explore, wherein there's an aspect of, you know what, let's just quote kind of whatever goes, right? As opposed to in something like in fiqh, there is practice. I have to do something, right? And so in that case, there's usually not going to be a concept of mention whatever has been said, right? But in tafsir, it's kind of like the opposite, where a lot of times tafsir gets less and less refined, because like, how do we understand and apply this? And people just have the most, random things, to say.
Sometimes I just feel this clouded up. The need of like it feels like, okay, the Quran should be like usually like not, because I guess sometimes explaining to us like Allah explains things and he doesn't explain them. And there's a reason why he did. And then when we get all of these other like reasons of like, oh, it might be done, then it just makes me feel like we're just crowding up something and we're ignoring that. All somebody mentioned something for that it doesn't matter. It's not never does not or whatever. It feels like we're like crowding up.
And in some cases, you're perfectly right. But there's a difference in, am I studying Quran? And then there's a difference in, am I studying this tafsir? And then there's a difference in, am I studying like tafsir, like the genre? Do those three things kind of make sense? Like there's an aspect of, I'm studying Quran, what is Allah trying to tell me? Right? Then there's a different subject altogether of the study of tafsir, right? Where it's like, what have people said? And what's everything that people have said, right? So that's like a different study. And so when you study Jalalain like that, you're more so studying the genre of tafsir than you are the Quran. And there's a benefit to that. There's a time and a place for that. And there's a goal for that. That's different than that, right? Sometimes that goal is really just exposure, knowing what's out there, helping you understand the text, knowing how you can go from place to place to place to place to place, how the Quran is applicable and touches on every aspect and facet of your life in the most craziest of ways, and also with how people can say whatever they want, right? So if that's how you feel, you can just be like, just pause for a moment, be like, right now we're just talking about what random people have said about maybe not random people, what some people have said about, some random ayah or something, right? And so it becomes right now this is an exercise in history, as opposed to an exercise in, let me deeply understand what the Quran is saying. Those kind of two angles make sense? Well, the text itself, Jalali, can kind of go back and forth. Sometimes it's very much like, what does this ayah mean? And then other times, he's just like, let me bring you fabricated narrations about how, the piece is a half jinn whose, foot was like the foot of a goat, because, the Bible said so, just like, thank you. It's not something I need in my life right now, but then it's also an aspect of awareness. Because then you get some crazy person just like, so Suleiman married a half jinn whose feet were goat feet. It's like, oh yeah, I read that in Jalalain, and our footnote said that is, a fabrication made up, in the Bible. So it's, don't keep in mind what your goal is, and keep in mind what things you need to get there are, right? I would those times just be like, you know, this is just a we're just a fun exploration of what other people have said. And because it's crazy, but sometimes one of those crazy things like, wow, that actually makes a lot of sense. Sometimes, rarely, you know, but it's like sometimes like, wow, that was a really beautiful explanation of the ayah. That had nothing to do with the ayah, but it was just really great. But nothing to do with the ayah at hand, you know? And just keep everything in its place.
So then, what is the limit of us? Because like all, or like, and like not every logic we have either. But then you're using your logic to be like, well, that didn't make sense to me. I'm not gonna.
Wait,
That's like now you're choosing.
logical sense is needed when it comes to these are aspects of belief that Allah has allowed human minds to make judgments off of them, right? There's an aspect of belief where it's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, you know, I'm telling you there's one God. That one God is worthy of worship. And he sent prophets. Muhammad is a prophet. And there are angels, there are day of judgment and the like. Do I have the faculty to on my own ascertain, is there a day of judgment or not? Like if a human being without revelation was just like, I am 100% sure there's a day of judgment. I do not have the capacity to do so. I can be like, it would make a lot of sense, right? And so there are some things Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you believe, if the aspects of belief that you can logically judge to be right or wrong make sense. After that level of belief, then it's everything else is sami'na wa ta'ana. I have heard it and I have obeyed it, right? It's like when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes, you know, how do I judge if he's a prophet or not? Yeah, like you're like you, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you've known Muhammad for whatever 30 years of your life. Muhammad comes out the next, 2 weeks later, and just like, I'm a prophet. Okay, but is that something you can logically gauge? You can't? Like you just said, like a reasonable statement. You were truthful before. What happened, at the age of 40 that you're no longer, are you still logical or are you not? Are you still truthful or not? Right? Do you seem sane? Are you saying things of, hey, don't worship idols? Does that make sense or not? Those claims in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made as, you can judge the right or wrong of this, right? Which is not everything in the deen. These are things that bring somebody into the faith. After that, it's sami'na wa ta'na, right? Because for me to be like, Jannah, the trees of a leaf in Jannah is the size of an elephant, I'm like, oh, what? But that's not a point that's not a place for me to use my intellect, because I've already accepted, I know there's a one true God. I know he has sent this revelation. And so if there are rules in here, there are certain statements in here that are not within my realm of making a logical decision, then those things I accept.
I'm talking about like when people bring
even more so.
So I understand what you mean about that, but when it comes to all these other students who put burn, like what because you just said like something for reasonable, you take
You have the full range to do that with anything that's not revelation. Yeah, but now you see how that's an explanation now. So an explanation of revelation has to make sense or not make sense. That doesn't mean you change revelation, but the explanation should, if anybody wants to go, by all means, you can go, right? The explanation of revelation, like for example, if, we all agree there are 4 rak'ahs for Dhuhr. Father tell you, you know what? Because at the time of Dhuhr, if you put your hand up in the sky and you go like this, your 4 fingers would cover up the sun. That's why we have to pray for it. See, this is the most mind. Nobody has ever told me this in my entire life. Islam now makes. I didn't say that. I mean, I'm just saying like something different. But you see what I'm saying? Like, what is your response to me? This is the classic, Sheikh Farhan. I have nothing to do with that statement. You know what I mean? So it's footnotes happens all the time.
Children of Muslims have, like they have different, and that's why there's different like races. And I forget there was another thing about there was different races, but I can't remember that. But like it's like things like that. I'm just like I understand like maybe it could be not true, but like what is your approach? I mean, does it affect anything? But then the like it's just why.
Can I connect that?
Yeah.
Can I connect to that too? Like some of those are biblical narrations.
Yeah.
Like when it's mentioned in the footnotes, it doesn't say any of that, and it's from Islam. Yes, whatever.
Yeah.
So then Sheikh Zayd has we asked Sheikh Zayd if he supposed to be double checked. They mentioned these are Islamic and stuff. But what's the point in mentioning those? Because number one, it goes completely against like what we know of prophets. Number one, and secondly, it's not reliable in any way. So why mention it? And we like bring it up. Like yes, we should be exposed to it.
Because there's a different subject of let's just mention everything, and that's the approach of some people. Like Tabari, rahimahullah, his job in tafsir is I'm going to quote you any even somewhat reasonable explanation, right? Like for example, there's one where Allah Subhanahu wa Taala talks about men and men having some obligation, responsibility, and then he'll quote people in there who says, yeah, that means they have beards and women don't have beards. Like, I don't really think that that's what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala meant here. Like, this is my job to.
And for example, if you like crazy, then to a certain extent, that's making, I don't know if this is favorite. To a certain extent, making his whole work not as authentic versus like.
There's a difference in being an encyclopedia.
But then what's the goal? Why?
To document history. Like history of what people have said.
But you want to make it.
But you know kind of how, if we go back like 2 months, when Shaykh Akram was, he was like, hadith is history. Are there mistakes that people have made in narrating hadith? Yeah. And that sometimes impact people's perception and they get what is the sunnah wrong.
So that's why.
But because you need someone to quote everything, and then for a historian to be like, no, that's not right. Because then the rebuttal will be, hey, you didn't bring this. Why didn't you include this? Because I think this narration is what is sunnah. It's like, I didn't bring it because I think it's fabricated. But the guy's dead now, so he cannot say that. So the argument either be he didn't know. So again, that's what I'm saying. There's the aspect of what is Quran, how do I understand Quran? And then a lot of subjects are also just what is history? What have people said? What are quotations? How have people understood this?
Some of the alfaz are just blessed.
But
it's like the biblical narrations, right? Like going back to the story of Hadith Salam, right? How the different races came about or whatever. There was a couple different things about, like different things the Bible mentions, and like I would mention like prophet, the narration said prophet Muhammad or whatever.
Yeah. So with the here, like maybe the how do you say, is your name Hawa?
Yes. Hawa.
Is it related? If so, I'll take it.
Yeah, it's somehow related to what you said about the papers at the beginning of the class. I was asking about like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you were talking about like if you want to propose like a subject. I wanted to propose like Muslim fiction because I had a stance on it at one point. Now I really don't know where I stand. I've been studying a little bit. So what is your opinion on it? If you can give it to maybe that can guide me in my writing my paper. Because I don't know if like because at one point I felt like it was a story. Now like a lot of people said it's a lie. So I don't know what do you think? So you kind of guide me a little bit. Did you understand my question?
No, I'm sorry, I did not understand your question.
Okay, so I'm asking about Muslim fiction. Do you think it's okay to write
About what?
Muslim fiction?
About what?
Muslim fiction, Muslim fiction.
Monthly fiction?
No, Muslim,
What?
Muslim fiction, Muslim fiction.
Like
Yeah, okay.
Muslim fiction?
Yeah, Muslim fiction.
What? I'm sorry, I do not know what word is being said. Danya, you said something. I don't know what you said either.
Muslim fiction.
Muslim.
Like fiction, yeah, like literature.
Oh, okay.
Muslim fiction. Yeah, like what is your stance on it? Do you consider it as a lie, or do you think it's okay for Muslim to write Muslim fiction? Just like it's like music, like the debate on music. It's the same thing with Muslim fiction right now.
I think somebody was like, I'm coming up with a story that is
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
not-
but it's like sometimes a lot of Muslims usually write fiction with like some like to help their other brothers and sisters to like practice reading better. So I don't know. Do you think it's a lie altogether? Like, should Muslims engage into this or no?
a lie would only be, it could only be a lie if someone's claiming it to be true.
Okay.
Like, or else, how does anybody teach a class of fiqh? Like, theoretically, some guy said, I divorced my wife. Well,
yeah, it's a scenario. So that's what I think.
But nobody's saying the guy, this, I'm not saying it's like theoretically. So if the beginning is like, this is a fictional book.
Okay. Yeah, because I always thought it's a scenario. Like fiction is actually a scenario and not a lie. But like I don't know where I stand now. So
As long as no claim of truth is being made, there's
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Daniel.
You're welcome. As the Prophet ﷺ said, when you get things from Israeliyat, لا نصدقه ولا نكذبه. We do not, unless it's an absolute fabrication, we don't declare it to be a lie. And unless it's absolutely true and confirmed, we don't declare it to be true. There's very clearly differentiate that when you're studying Jalalain, you're studying like 3 different subjects at the same time. You're studying Quran, you're studying, I'm also trying to understand Jalalain's methodology. So you're studying the tafsir book, and then you're also studying all the history and quotations that are out there. So there's like 3 different things that you're doing, right? And so in that perspective, when it comes to what people have said, it's just what somebody has said, right? If somebody's like, you know what, I think, perhaps when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he first got revelation, he might have felt a certain way. It's like, okay, that's your opinion. You may think that. If it makes sense, sure, it could be, maybe, but I don't need to. Like Nadia said, there's nothing I need to do about it. Like somebody could say that we pray 4 years because if you cover your hand with the sun, like I was going to pray 4 either way. Your explanation makes no difference to me. Are we good up to there?
I think it's just like
you just don't like it.
Put a lot of emphasis on authority and like making sure things are like authentic and all this stuff. We study all of them to the Quran and how it's preserved and things and how it's preserved. And if we're putting so much emphasis on that, it kind of runs me that way. So we have this other side where like everything says and goes, and then we're like studying that and maybe not giving it as much merit, but enough merit that we're discussing it as like a validating of opinion that someone said. And maybe it's me putting in my logic into this where it doesn't belong to Adam.
So what you're saying is right, but don't forget, you're getting a snippet of a quotation, right? I understand. But sometimes if you go back to the original place that those things were said, perhaps that was quoted by just some random guy. Well, I mean, that's the publisher's thing. Like you can go look those up yourself, right? But what I'm trying to get is there's either is said by somebody totally outlandish and we don't take it, or sorry, not that conclusion, but is said by somebody totally outlandish, right? That's one hint. Or sometimes it is quoted and it is preserved through our own works. But when you look at the context of when and how it is quoted, it is always said, this is what somebody has said. This is ridiculous. Bushra, the publisher, will not always do that because do you want him to give you a paragraph every time one sentence will suffice? You see what I'm saying? But let me put it a different way. In Kitab al-Iman and Mishkat, how many heretical groups did you cover? Yeah. Covered Shia, you covered Karramiyya, you covered the Mu'tazila, the Jahmiyya, the Jabariyya, all of that. Why do those names still exist? People existed like that. Do people like that exist today? Okay, there's Shia.
There's new person that we talked.
Okay, so bring that up as a new group, but like there is no Karami left alive on this earth. There was like 300 of them that like ever existed, like literally 1100 years ago. But why do we still mention them? Because people mention them. So it's a part of our theological history that these groups existed. What's from the hadith? Which groups? The Prophet never said, if there's a hadith that mentions the name of a group, that hadith is probably fabricated. But I'm saying there's more groups beyond just those two or three. There's maybe two or three specific points the Prophet mentions in hadith like that, right? But there are like 50, 60 groups, right? That are still quoted regularly. You pick up like just about any book of Aqidah. There's like, oh, these are the 60 groups that have existed. How many of them exist today? 2.5. But it's a part of our theological history. These people existed. These were their founders. This is how they came up with these opinions. This is how they got to their deviancy. This is how we dealt with that deviancy. But
that's history that you're talking. But just saying that I have this thought of this is my reason to exist or whatever. I don't know if that's a good point. I don't know, maybe I have to think about it.
Okay, so that's one aspect. You can either put it in the bundle of history, like we're just quoting things. And listen, the Bushra publishers, which they make like what 50 cents an hour, in Pakistan, although they've gotten a lot better. And I don't know, maybe they make $3, $4, $5 an hour. I don't know. You can ask, but so there's one aspect of, oh, these are the same people that publish your wonderful Mishkat with all of the ta'liqat from Saharanpuri, Mirqat al-Mafatih, Lama'at al-Tanqih, and all of that. These are the same people, maybe different groups, but the same company that does that, right? And so there's an aspect of, sometimes he'll quote something from Mirqat that he explained in 3 pages. They just put the one sentence summary, right? And so this is a footnote for a reason. Sometimes in my footnotes, I'm like, there's this outlandish thing. I don't have time to explain it. Go look into it if you care, right? So that's a second thing. A third thing is realize for maybe up until like 200 years ago, the level of critique of biblical sources was not really existent. Because I believe Sheikh Tariq has said this, why do Muslims need to go bashing, the Old and New Testament when there are things that are true in there? Or there's still perhaps a supposed mention of the Prophet ﷺ in the works today, right? And so that mindset was never really there in the past of these books. Like today, if I were to tell you, how true is the Bible? Like King James Version. People are like, I'll just chuck it out the window and not care, right? That was never the mentality. Because they're like, that level of historical critique and all that is not the way it is today. In the sense of Muslims didn't mind saying, yeah, you know what, there's some clearly fake things in here. But if there are other things that aren't in clear contradiction, maybe, maybe questionable, they're just like, sure, we can quote it. Because from that perspective of some of those scholars, this is more information than we have. This is why some of the Sahaba, they would go to the Muslims that converted from Judaism, that were rabbis. You tell me about the stories of the prophets that we don't know about. You tell me about Nuh and his children. So if the guy's like, yeah, you know what, Nuh's children were the start of the races. Like, wow, that's not information Allah or the Prophet taught to us. I have no other frame of reference to judge whether that's right or wrong, but it could make sense. So you see how in a certain environment, a certain opinion about history, is it a part of Aqidah to believe that Nuh's children were, the founders of races? No. Like from a historical perspective, would it make sense for somebody that is living 1,500 years ago to be like, maybe that is the way races started? Like, it's like, for them, it's like, cool, maybe, sounds about right. Or if the Bible says, Nuh alayhi salam, was in this location. It's like, Quran doesn't tell me otherwise. Sure. Right? And so sometimes there's an aspect of, wow, Ibrahim alayhi salam was in the Iraq area. Great. That makes sense. Sometimes it's, Nuh alayhi salam's children are the founders of the races. Interesting. I don't know enough ancient history. Maybe that makes sense. And then it's, Sulaiman did kufr. Well, Muslims are still going to quote that. Why? Because look, they said that Sulaiman did kufr. Look, the Quran is so accurate. It says, وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانَ وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا. Sulaiman did not do kufr. And so their quotation is going to be everything. But sometimes there's a purpose. Sometimes it's we're just going to quote what the Bible has said. Sometimes they just straight up translate the Bible. Like this has a background that we don't have. Sometimes it will agree, sometimes it will disagree, sometimes it will affirm, sometimes it will not affirm. And scholars aren't always, how do I word this? Like, perfect is one thing, but they're not always going to spell it out for you. Like if I was to teach tafsir and the ayah said, وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانَ, Sulaiman did not do kufr, وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا, but the devils did do kufr. And I said the Bible says Sulaiman did kufr, and I don't make any comment and I move on. From my perspective, I'm teaching third year seminary students Jalalain. Do I need to explain that when the Christians say that Sulaiman did kufr, that is absolute kufr? For somebody to say that Sulaiman did kufr? Do I need to say that? Yeah.
So sometimes I agree, that's true. But sometimes I feel like we don't acknowledge the fact that what we're learning is gonna go back to like our families or community. So even though like we in the century, the teacher's not explaining the whole thing, then we don't understand how to understand it and then explain it to some people who don't have it.
Then you talk that.
I was never exposed to like shared and whatever. So then like sometimes my brother asked me what about share because in school they learn about there's two sets of Islam, so machine, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And class where I go share, blah blah blah. But I don't have that. I understand that maybe I should go around and go like give the knowledge. But sometimes in class it's just like an idea that you're in third year or you're in seventh year. So you should already know it's okay, yes, I understand it, but we don't have the background to take that and then be able to explain to someone who doesn't, because we were there 3 years ago.
That's a very good point. part of that comes with time. Part of that comes with self-research, sure, but kind of how like there's a time in the classroom where we're teaching academically, and there's a time in the classroom, like right now we're not being academic necessarily. Like I'm not teaching you a subject like critically right now, right? And so right now we're talking about like life and stuff like that. And just like you differentiate that in a classroom, right? Know that when subjects are taught, that same mentality is there. So when you're learning something from a perspective of we're learning the textbook, we're learning the material, max 50, if not 40, if not 30% of that is what I translate into talking to other people, right? And then there's an aspect of like real world conversation, where it's like right now we're talking about application of those academic things that we covered. Much more of that is open. Or I'll give another example. You know, somebody asked about, you know, in class, somebody's like, whatever, you know, somebody thought about, you know, suicide or something like that, right? I will always make the caveat. Right now, I'm talking to you as students, not as somebody who is coming to me telling me I have suicidal thoughts. The way I am talking to you as a classroom of people asking me how do I deal with this individual is not how I will deal with that individual. Does that make sense? Like, you think I'm going to talk to somebody who has suicidal thoughts like this? No, I'm going to have a very different tone, a very different response. But there's a time different, like how I talk about this. There's a time when we're learning the subject and the material and, you know, the history and academic side. And there's like real world. And then there's how do I package this and then take it to somebody else? That is an aspect. That's the job of a student, to be aware and have a level of wisdom. And perhaps it's also good for the teacher to make a note about these are academic discussions versus these are, I would not say this in public. How many there are, you know, how many things I've heard of my teacher say in the classroom that they would themselves say, I would never say it like this in public. But so keep, as a student, teachers not always going to spell it out, right? But getting an idea about how do they speak, how do they talk. For example, would any of them give in a khutbah, oh, you know what? This is in mukhaffafa. You need to know that in Jalalain so you know how to translate that. But in a khutbah, they go and say, you know, this is in mukhaffafa, this is waw atf bayan. But did a teacher ever tell you don't say that in a khutbah or in a talk at your community or tell that in your Sunday school? That's just a part of understanding. And do some people do that mistake where half their khutbah is grammar? Yeah. But that's an aspect of staying with your teachers, learning, getting advice. This is what I said. This is not how it went, you know, of just talking and communicating, you know, and the like. Again, like in Kitab al-Iman, you learn about Shia and Mu'tazila and Jabariya and the Khawarij and the Murji'ah. But you also know, hey, my teachers never talk about it outside of the classroom, because that's an academic discussion. One last example, and I'm happy to talk more, but like this is particular. Like for example, you know, in Pakistan, you got Deobandis, you got Brailvis, you got Shia, you got Ahmadis and Qadian, you got like everything under the sun there, you know. And you'll see like some of the biggest teachers, like the Grand Mufti of Pakistan, you know, the head teachers of like Darul Karachi and the like, will go on public TV and be like, don't call yourself Deobandi, don't call yourself Brailvi, don't call yourself Shi'i. We are all Muslim. Huwa sammakumul muslimin. Allah named you Muslim. This is the religion of Ibrahim. Stop fighting, stop killing each other, stop calling each other these names. We're Muslim. That same teacher, when teaching Kitab al-Iman from Sahih Muslim, is going to tear apart Shia, is going to tear apart Brailvis. Like, that is a different time. That is an academic endeavor. Do not apply that to how do I live with my Shi'i neighbor? How do I live with my Brailvi neighbor? Does that make sense? And those things you just pick up over time. Like there are things that you read in your hawashi and your footnotes and your ta'liqat, you're just like, thank you, no thank you, bye. You know? And there's somebody like, wow, that was really good. I can tell that to a 7-year-old. There's something like, okay, I can use that if I'm talking to a seminary type of audience. Somebody's like, I don't ever think I need to ever even remember that statement ever in my entire life. Those were 3 seconds wasted in my life, you know? And just knowing how to navigate. Knowing how to navigate. Again, a part of these works are technical, they're academic, they deal with revelation. A part of them is just history. You can't fault them for that because that's how we have such a rich heritage in history. That I know that 1400 years ago, what were the issues in today's society? Like, for example, what if nobody wrote about the other side of, you know, the issues with, you know, transgenderism, the issues with atheism? When society 300 years from now, they're like, oh, looks like they didn't have any problems. We had a lot of problems. And it's because we wrote it down and because we talk about it, because it will be discussed and used as case studies in the future, whether right or wrong, whether it only partially quoted or fully quoted, there's a reason why it got to where it is today in history, right? Not everything's always going to be spelled out, though. Do not let this like stop you or confuse you. If there's things like that, and there's always going to be things like that, just master. I say this as a joke, but I mean it like legitimately. You need to master. Have you ever seen Sheikh Ron go first? Have you ever seen him do that, or even like in class? You need to master that. Somebody tells you and they say, why did you teach my kid how to pray in Sunday school? I only want them to be here so that, you know, they're not, you know, they don't keep me up on Sunday. You tell them? Like, it's so ridiculous, outlandish. Thank you. I hope you have a great day. You know, like, I don't need to entertain that. Right? At least right now, I don't need to entertain that. Maybe when you're a bit more calm, maybe when you're sensible, we can talk about this, right? And just mastering this aspect of you read something, you hear something. I don't think this is a necessary aspect of thick skin, but like that's a part of it when dealing with people. But when I read, just I don't know what it's just garbage. Move on. And you have the intellect, you have the tools, you have the Arabic ability to be able to figure out that was absolute nonsense. This is okay, maybe cool, weird, versus wow, that was very enlightening and inspiring. You have the tools to do that. And you have full authority to do so. You are only told to do sami'na wa ata'na to Allah and His Messenger after you have already accepted this is Allah and His Messenger. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Everyone and everything after that. I can have respect, but I'm not obliged to say sami'na wa ata'na. Right? Even radiyallahu anhum, the Sahaba. These are the ones that taught us our deen and our faith. But if they have a certain opinion, because they have differences of opinion. So let's say Ibn Mas'ud has one opinion, Ibn Umar has a different opinion. I'm not obliged. How can I follow both of them if they say something else? I can't. Say, Ibn Umar, you are great. I love you. You're a Sahabi. You know, if I could, you know, live a day with you, I would. But in this case, I don't think from what I know from the Sunnah, from the other companions, from the more senior companions, that this is not the way some XYZ should be done. Jazakumullahu khairan, barakallahu feekum, right? And so don't feel obliged to. There's an aspect of our studies that is sacred. There's an aspect of our studies that is not sacred, right? Like the wahi part is sacred. How to implement wahi is sacred. What people have said explaining wahi can potentially be sacred, or it can honestly be the exact opposite. Does that make sense? Like don't let this burden you. And I think Sheikh Ahmed Belou says, you know, there's something you just don't read anymore. Like I don't know what that was. You just read and you move on. And there are some things that are really just like, there's some things that are so absurd, you're just like, this is absurd, I don't need to ask anybody. And there's some things that are a weird level of absurd where you're just like, this absurdly makes a little bit of sense. Fine, ask. Ask. Anything else? Oh, it's 2 hours.
But basically, how I feel is like, it's like extra journal points that other scholars have written down, and it's like if you want to research it and
But it also depends on book to book, right? Like the ta'liqat in the Bushra's print of Bukhari is great. In Sahih Muslim, it's literally just we quote Sharh of An-Nawawi, and then if he's ever pro Shafi'i there, we'll quote we'll quote Fath al-Mulhim by Ahmad Shibbir or Shibbir Ahmad Uthmani or Mufti Taqi. So like that's the goal of their footnotes. Whereas in Jalalain's footnotes, it's just everything under the sun, right? So that the style of that is different, you know, and just keep that in mind.
more than super quick.
Yeah.
There's certain like how can I do that or like which I haven't even mentioned different points which can kind of change like the way you understand it. Like what I was asking about last night was
وَسَوْرُهُ بِضَاعَةٍ.
so like whether we understand it as the brothers taking the caravan to take him away and stuff that kind of, the W there can kind of understand the way we think of that. Right?
Mhm.
So what we
I don't always need to pick an interpretation, right? I don't, right? And that's something to keep in mind. Of I only need to pick if there's a hukam on me. So as you have seen your teachers do in things that are generic, it could be like this, could be like this. Move on. In some things, really, both are said. One really doesn't make any sense. Like I could say, when did the brothers figure out how to find, Egyptian merchants? Why did they just sell them to him directly? Why did they put him in a well? See how I can argue both sides, but at the end of the day, is this worth my argumentation? Is it worth my argumentation in this class? Maybe it will be in other places. Maybe if somebody who's doing I'm doing a 1 year long deep dive into Surah Yusuf, there I will explore it. But right now, move on. It doesn't impact the point of the story. It doesn't impact like you said, it doesn't impact what Allah wants me to know from this. It doesn't impact my understanding of the Quran. This is an understanding of history, right? So if something's a ridiculous explanation of history, is history. Who cares? Whether I think Nuh alayhi salam lived 5,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, who cares? Right? So don't let things that are, I don't want to say not important, but are not immediately actionable by me, like take up headspace. We good? فهمتم؟ اطمئنتم؟ Okay. سبحان الله بحمده سبحان الله العظيم سبحان الله وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
Sheikh, I had a quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry, just for the topic for the final, what was the guidance on that? Just send you a topic with supporting facts or
Send me a topic. I want to talk about this. This is why I want to talk about it. This is my kind of, maybe not conclusion, but a little bit of why and a little bit of what angle I want to take.
I see. Okay. Jazakallah khair.
Like I have a sample sentence for you to send me of like, I want to talk about this. This is why I want to talk about it. This is the main point I want to look into. These are perhaps counter examples that I want to argue against, something like that.
Okay. All right. Jazakallah.
Okay, Danya?
So sorry, but I got the general gist, but can you just repeat what the exact question was? Because I couldn't hear when you said that was a great point.
That was what did I say? That was a great point.
I don't know. Someone was talking and asked this question, and you said, like before you started answering, I just want to know what that question was.
No, it was one chance. It was really, it was like one of the last questions.
I have. When did I say that?
Okay, sorry, I don't know if that's random.
I don't remember what thing I said that about. I feel like I said that was a great point like 2 or 3 times today. Like 20 minutes ago. I don't.
No, just this last point, like point that you made right now. But was the general question just something that like someone read in like Jalalain in one of the footnotes that didn't make sense? Was that basically it?
Oh, well, yeah. What Abdurrahman he said was as an example of وَأَسَرُّهُ بِضَاعَةٍ, either like the merchants kind of hit him, or the brothers like made a private deal with these merchants to go and take him. So I'm saying that was a great point in the sense of it makes no difference to me what opinion actually happened or what opinion I pick.
Okay, got you.
Whether the brothers did it, practically speaking, who cares?
Yeah, okay, sorry, thank you. I was just trying to fully understand.
I already ended. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلق محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين.